איך עושים פודקאסט, הפודקאסט שיעזור לכם לספר את הסיפור שלכם, עם אור אליעז.
טוב, אז שלום לכם, ברוכים אל פרק חדש של איך עושים פודקאסט. היום אנחנו לא באולפן שלי, אנחנו אפילו לא בישראל, אנחנו בארצות הברית, בעיר קטנה וחביבה ששמה דנבר. אנחנו כאן בכנס הפודקאסטים הבינלאומי. אנחנו הולכים לעשות היום פודקאסט שמדבר בכלל על שוק הפודקאסטים האמריקאי. אנחנו הולכים לצלול קצת לשוק האמריקאי, להבין מה קורה שם, איך העולם הזה עובד, ולפחות מהניסיון שלי, הרבה מאוד מהדברים שקורים בשוק האמריקאי, קורים כמה שנים אחר כך בישראל. אז נמצא אותנו כאן אדמס, תכף אנחנו נשמע אותו, הוא המנהל של GROWYOURSHOW, שזאת סוכנות פודקאסטים אמריקאית, שעובדת עם לקוחות בארצות הברית, ואנחנו בעצם עושים די אותו דבר היום, פשוט במדינות אחרות, אז רציתי ככה קצת לדבר איתו, על איך נראה העולם מבחינתו, איך הוא בונה את הפודקאסטים שלו ומה הוא עושה. אז מעכשיו הרעיון הזה יהיה באנגלית, אז לא יהיו כתוביות בקוף הפודקאסט, אבל אני בטוח שתהנו גם ממנו, אז תהנו. So Adam, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, man?
Great. Thank you so much for coming to my podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
I've never been on a podcast that is not in English as the main language. So this is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I think that a good thing about Israel and Israeli people that we all talk English in some level. So I think that most of my listeners will have no problem listening to that interview, and they will enjoy it as much as any other episode. So cool. It's a good thing for me. So first of all, I wanted to, we had a very nice conversation yesterday about podcasting business, and about life in a matter of everything. So I wanted first of all to introduce yourself to our listeners. Can you tell a little bit about yourself, how you got to the podcasting world, and what are you doing in Grow Your Show today?
Cool. Well, my name's Adams, as he mentioned, and I got into podcasting through real estate investing. So I've been, my stepdad is the one who told me that I needed to be in real estate long time ago. I was in college, and in college, he told me before college, let's back up and say that, but I'd never listened. So finally, while at university, my dad said, he purchased me a piece of property, and he basically gave it to me. The funny part of that story is, after he gave it to me, he made me pay for it. So I had to pay him $100, and I was in college, and $100 was a lot of money. So I got into real estate investing especially when I sold that for a profit. I made more money on that real estate investment than I would have made if I used my degree for a whole year. So my first year of becoming a teacher, I went to music education.
You play some instruments?
I play every instrument.
Really?
Random, right?
I used to play guitar even in high school. I have some of my finals are in music. I studied composition and jazz guitar playing.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, so I played bass trombone in jazz ensemble.
Nice.
I was a percussionist. I played trumpet in one of the bands. I played clarinet in a different band, and I played tuba in another band, and sousaphone in another band.
Nice.
And I was a composer. You mentioned composing. So music and teaching people music was a big passion of mine, and so that's what I was graduating in. And then when I sold this piece of real estate and made more than I could have made in a whole year, I said, my stepdad's kind of smart. I should do what he says. So he said, start a business and invest in real estate, which got me into full-time real estate. And eventually I thought to myself, I'm running out of my own money, but I still want to do deals. But now my capital's locked. And so basically, I launched a podcast about real estate investing in hopes that I would attract money. I would attract people that wanted to be part of it. So this is how I originally got into podcasting. And it took a long time, but I finally grew the podcast so that it was ranking in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world. And I was really excited about that. And I used to help people for free. I would just give people advice because I love it. I'm a teacher. I went to school for teaching.
Yeah.
And so I'd give advice, and one day it was 2019, and I believed at the time, I don't know for sure if this is true, but I thought we would see a crash in an economic crash by the year 2024. So I was like, within 5 years, it's not going to be good. So I wanted to slow down on buying more real estate, but I didn't know what to do with my time, and I wasn't in a financial position to completely retire. So I still had to work. So I decided to find out with a mastermind group. I asked them, hey, what should I do with my time? What do you guys think is my genius zone? And everybody said podcasting. They said, you've helped a lot of us with our podcasts, and we're so grateful. Like, you should get paid to do that. So I thought about it, and I agreed, and I launched a podcast business in 2019, and I sold my real estate podcast. I sold the branding and everything of that to another person, and I launched a company called Grow Your Show, serving podcast hosts and helping them get ranked in the top 1% in the world as well.
Can you tell us what do you do exactly? So you take in a podcast host, what do you do with him, and how do you help him to get to that beautiful target?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we help that person stay inside their lane. Every business owner needs to focus on what they're really good at. I fully believe that. You should do what makes you the most amount of money, and the other parts of your business, you should delegate it off to somebody else. And in this case, they would delegate all of the hard stuff. So to give you an example, we edit the podcast, we produce the podcast, we write all the show notes for the podcast. We also do the social media marketing for our clients, and we'll even email their guest. So if they have a guest on the show, like I'm your guest today, my team, if we were doing the editing, we would create promotional images, we would post it on your social, and then we would email it to me so that I could post it also and grow the show. And so once you push record, we handle all those other things. On top of just helping you stay in your lane, we make sure that we can do some paid ads. Here's the interesting thing before I tell you what we do for paid ads. I want to just explain something. When we are in a car or even in an airplane, if we're trying to go somewhere, we need fuel. Our bodies need fuel. We need to eat, or else we're not going to make it very far. Our gas tanks need fuel, or else we're not going to drive very far. And in fact, we might just be stuck. And I think a lot of people that start podcasts today, they aren't thinking about adding fuel to the tank. They're just thinking about simply having a car. I've got a car, I'm good. But if you don't have the gas in the tank, you're not going anywhere in the car. You just have a car.
So what's the gas in your opinion?
The gas in a podcast is paid ads. The gas is getting in front of the listener. So we want two things. All podcasters want at least one of these two things, and most podcasters want both. Income and impact. They want to make money through their podcast, and they want to make a difference through their podcast. So income and impact. If you want income and you want impact, you can't have just a diary. And what I mean by a diary is that you're the only one who listens to your podcast. That won't work. That's just owning a car without the gas. So adding the fuel is to get people to know about the show. You can do paid ads and you can do organic ads. Organic would be social media, talking to people, meeting people, shaking hands, having business cards. This is organic. And this grows a podcast, getting on other people's shows. Like right now, I'm being in front of some people that I've never been in front of before. They're hearing my name for the first time. And that's a benefit to me to be able to grow my audience also. Mm-hmm. So this is organic fuel. And paid fuel is like advertising, Facebook ads, banner ads, all sorts of advertising. I do also a private message campaign, which we DM or direct message individuals who are perfect listeners of our clients' podcast.
Wow. That's a very, like guerrilla campaign sort of thing. Like I wanted to ask you because it's an issue, it's a question that comes a lot around my clients, and it's something that maybe we're trying to crack. So maybe you can help me with your knowledge and information. When you are doing a paid ad, type of stuff. What are you aiming for? You aiming for engagement? You're aiming for more clicks on the ad? And what do you exactly ad? What is your ad? What do you publish? Do you publish like a small bit of your podcast? Do you just have a picture invitation to hear a podcast? So what is your strategic when you come to having more listeners as a campaign as a paid ad?
Well, for the Facebook advertising, we do something that's called split testing. Another way to put it is A/B testing.
Yeah.
The point of that for marketers is you put up multiple different types of advertising, multiple different types of campaigns. You'll put it in front of different types of audiences. You'll also have one with a picture, one with a video. You'll have one with just words. You might have one with short copy, so only a few words, and one with long copy, long form copy, so it really goes into detail. And then what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of money behind multiple ads at the same time and figure out which one performs best for that podcaster. Because not every podcast, not every audience would follow suit based on the same type of thing. Mm-hmm. You got to play to the player. I call it play to the player because if you look at like playing gambling with cards or something, you'll need to read the other people. How are you going to react? You need to do it so that they do something. When you're playing, there's this game in the US. I don't know if it's everywhere, but there's one called Apples to Apples, and there's another game called Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, I love Cards Against Humanity. Love it? It's amazing.
Okay,
yeah.
So when you play Cards Against Humanity, you have all of these cards, and they're subjective. And you will play whichever one you think is best, but to be even better at winning that game, you'll play the one that's best that you think the other person's going to pick. So you play to the player. And so the same thing with these ads. Not every type of podcast has the same type of audience.
Yeah. And still, can you tell me what succeeded more? What worked more?
Yeah.
What was better compared to some other thing?
Yeah. One of the things that work incredibly well is just a really weird photo. So, for example, you and I are recording this on audio and it's being recorded on video at the same time. And there might come a time that I look really funny when I'm listening to you or I'm about to take a breath or I'm looking off to somebody because there's people that we can see at this event. I'm looking at somebody, I might look confused or I might look mad. Just randomly, we make different faces on accident. And we could screenshot a place where it incites curiosity. We could just have a still image of a place where you look strange or I look strange. And the cool thing is that seems to perform better than almost anything else.
It matters what's the subject of the podcast. Like let's say it's a business podcast for real estaters.
No, that actually is almost this is almost doesn't matter for anything that's out there. It doesn't matter because if you have something that people don't know what's happening, what ends up going through their mind is they stop scrolling. So let's say if this is a Facebook advertising and somebody's scrolling and they see somebody looking angry or silly or sexual or something where it's just like, what is happening? It makes us curious. And so we have to stop scrolling.
Interesting.
And so those tend to get a little bit better clicks than the handsome or the beautiful pictures. If we're just smiling or posing, people tend to just skip past it. But if it looks like something's happening and we're not sure what, people tend to stop scrolling. And so it gets a little bit better engagement when it's just a weird picture where we're not sure what's happening.
Interesting. And what's in the video compartment? Like, what do you find working there?
We do sometimes audiograms or videograms. The audiogram is technically a video, but you don't see people moving like you and I would be moving right now. Instead, you would just hear our voices, and you would see a sound wave. And So we do some video, we do some sound wave.
With subtitles or just the sound wave?
Usually with subtitles. Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. Normally we use the subtitles. And these tend to get good traction, but not for every audience. The one thing that I think works for everybody is just a weird picture that you're not sure exactly what's happening. Somebody looks mad or confused or whatever. We also will split test other things. And not only that, this is kind of interesting. We will do the same picture with a different copy. We'll do the same picture with, they call it a carousel, which basically you can slide through lots of pictures.
Photos, yeah.
Yeah. And we change the type of call to action. So we could have listen now, we could have download now, we could have subscribe, we could have learn more, all of these different calls to action. And listen now is a great call to action. So what we would do in that case would be an audiogram or a videogram, and it would be short. This is a good takeaway, 17 seconds or less.
Wow.
And it would also incite the curiosity. So it would be where we would start to talk about something that would be interesting, and then the call to action would be listen to the whole episode and click here to listen to the whole episode, and that would take them to another platform so that they could listen.
Yeah, interesting. So you what you're basically doing is trying to get the viewer, the listener, curious about what you do. You don't try to give him the answer and then tell him come and hear more answers, but you say, okay, this is the question. You don't know what the answer is right now. Let's give you the answer in the podcast.
Yeah.
So this is the strategy basically.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, interesting. So when you're working with business owners, with a lot of people that are trying to, as you said, either make an impact or either earn a profit, what are the stuff that you recognize most about your clients? Are they, why are they coming to do a podcast? What interests them? And if they're manage to get those targets that they want to, other targets are realistic, because some people come to that and I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan. I think I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan once or twice a month from somebody. Yep. So what do you see in your clients, in your leads, in your prospects?
Well, I would say that a ton of the people that join and want to do this, a lot of them, like you said, two a month or 2 a week, I would say a ton of them, they think that they are going to, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
There's this movie in the US, it's called Field of Dreams. It's about a baseball field, and this guy kept having a dream that he needed to build it. And there was this chant, if you build it, they will come. And it gives you chills. And you're like, ooh, if you build it, they will come. And it's meaningful to a lot of us. It makes us want to jump out. And people believe it so much, that they think all I have to do to be completely famous is have a podcast. But if you just have a car, it's not going anywhere.
It needs fuel.
It needs fuel.
Yeah.
So they come and they just expect it all to be done for them. They think that the podcast playing platform is going to be like, oh my gosh, John just started a podcast. We've got to make him famous right away. Like we've been waiting for John all year. It doesn't happen. You have to do the work. And so they do think that they're going to just become completely famous, that they're going to be the next Joe Rogan. And frankly, half of them, no offense to Joe Rogan, I'm not trying to offend him, half of the people that think that probably are at least as good as Joe Rogan. But they don't have the name, and they haven't done the fuel. Joe Rogan had a lot of fuel. He always is putting that fuel.
Yeah.
So the point being that, yes, a lot of them come and they think it's just automatically going to happen, and they think that they don't have to post anything. They think they don't have to tell anybody. They think they don't have to pay money for advertising, and they're just going to be famous. And it's very challenging to do that. When you launched your book in Hebrew, you went all crazy on social media.
I'm still am.
You sold thousands and thousands of copies, not because you had the book in your hand, but because you marketed it.
All the time. I'm marketing as we speak, actually. I just sold the book just before we got there. So it was
I think you had a two-part of the question. Do they expect that to happen? Yes, a lot of them do. And what do they learn? They learn that if you build it, they won't just come. You have to do something about it. Outside of that, my main client is a business professional. Most people that we work with, they're not hobbyist podcasts. They are professional podcasts. And the other part of your question was, why do they launch? Well, they launch not necessarily to become Joe Rogan, but they launch because they understand that their podcast is the top of their funnel. The podcast, everybody knows, at least in the US, I'm not sure if this translates perfectly into Hebrew, but know, like, trust.
Yeah,
people need to know you, like you, and trust you.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things that can get people to like you and trust you. But podcast is one of the best things to get more people to know you. Know is the first step. Step one, top of the funnel, I need people to know who I am, know what my business does. Step two is I need them to like me. This is a call to action on the podcast. An example of a call to action on a podcast would be download my book or buy my book for free or for $5 or whatever you do with your book, or schedule a call with me. That would get them from going to just know who you are to actually liking you, making that first step from know to like. And then for them to trust you, that's when they actually start doing business with you. That's when they hire you. That's when they tell their friends about you. That's when they trust you. If you want people to like you and trust you, basically if you want people to take action on your things and to hire you, then what do you need? You need more people to know you. To get the most amount of people to know you, a podcast is the obvious best answer to be the top of the funnel. And so my clients, new podcasters today, your listener now understands that I need people to know me before they can like me and trust me.
Yeah, I think that, in Israel, podcasts are not as popular as in the US. I think that podcast is more popular in the US than anywhere in the world. So it became like, something that everyone knows and everyone familiar with. But in Israel, let's say, I think 40 to 50% of the population doesn't know what a podcast is. There's a lot of research about it, and I think that it's a growing place for podcasts. That's what actually fascinates me, because I know there's a lot of place to grow inside such a market. And always I look at the United States and I see, all right, podcast is such a big thing in the US. It's going to be in Israel in few years' time.
Yeah.
So I know that. So from working in such a thriving community, and from everyone knowing a podcast so much, and especially like if you could tell us a little bit about the US market, how do you see the revenue part of podcasts, or the making money, as you start saying that? Because for me, I always tell my clients the way to make money are not direct. You won't make money from sponsorships most of the time. In the US, you just can click and you get sponsorship from someone through an automated systems. In Israel, you need to reach out to people, and it'll be maybe the half percent of podcasts in Israel really get money from sponsorship. So how does it look in the US?
On my podcast, my show is called The Podcast on Podcasting. I have an episode. It's about an hour long. And it goes through the 8 different ways that you can monetize, the 8 ways that you can make money through.
We'll add the link in the bio for people to listen to it.
Awesome. So I'm going to only talk about 3 ways.
And then we leave 5. We leave them curiosity for your episode. That's good.
These are probably the most common ways that people monetize. The last one is the best one. The first one is the worst one. Number 1 is that you can do what's called a CPM model. This, to the listener, means cost per meal or cost per 1,000 listens. And people, I'm here at a conference with you today, and I overheard somebody saying that they would pay $17 US CPM. That means if you are an average podcaster, you have 100 downloads per episode. If you're a top 10% podcaster, you have about 300 downloads per episode. If you're a top 1% podcaster, you have 3,500.
Yeah.
So let's take this $17 CPM and imagine that we're going to make money through our podcast. Well, if we go with an average podcast, 100 people download every episode, you're going to make a tenth of CPM because you only have 100 instead of 1,000. So you would make $1.7. $1, and you could not even buy a coffee per episode. It wouldn't work. If you had a top 10% podcast, better than 90% of all podcasts, and you had 300, then you'd make about $5. And if you had a top 1% podcast and you had $17 CPM, and that's what somebody here was saying,
Yeah.
then you would make, and I'm trying to do the math, you'd make about $60 US.
Exactly.
And $60 is not a lot. You're
No.
spending a whole hour to produce this. I want you to make a lot more money out of it. So option number 1, CPM, you're right. I don't think people should do it. You can automatically do it
I
in
think
the
it
US.
depends in what field, because some fields, like let's say if it's a hobby podcast, I think it's much makes more sense. And it's right, it's about that CPM, but I think about podcasts, it's like a niche. So if you have an advertiser that it's on your niche, will pay much more than $17 per.
That goes to number 2.
Yeah,
That's number 2.
I lead you to that. Yeah.
So number 1 is just CPM. They reach out to you and they say, I'll put money to any podcast, $17 per 1,000. Option number 2, you reach out to them. You make them a partner of the show. They are now a sponsor of the show, not just an advertiser. Those two words are different. Sponsor and advertiser. Advertiser, they don't know who you have as a listener. Sponsor, they think very deeply on, do you and I align? Are we in the same place? So number 2 is you would reach out to them, get them on your podcast, and you let them know about your podcast, who you serve, and why it's good for them. Most of the time, people that I work with doing option number 2, they'll be able to make maybe about 3,000 if they are an average podcast. That's 100 downloads per episode. They can make about $3,000 US per month. If they are a top 10% podcast making about 300 downloads per episode, then they could probably make between $5,000 and maybe $6,000 per month.
It's money that you can live your life in Israel, like let's say in a basic level.
Yeah. And if you're a top...
Only from your podcast, doing nothing else.
And if you're a top 1% podcast making about 3,500 downloads, you should be able to make $10,000 to $20,000 per month, and that's a lot of money even in the U.S.
Yeah, for sure. It's
like doctors sometimes don't even make that much money.
Yeah,
and you're making it just by podcasting.
Amazing.
That's option number 2. Now, the option number 3 is the absolute best option, if you can do it, and that is that your company serves. Your company is the sponsor. Your own company. I'm going to use my company as an example. And I'm going to be a little bit transparent with my numbers. So I'm a top 0.5% podcast. So I've got about 6,000 downloads per episode.
In what span of time? After a week, after a month from the episode?
In a 30 days. 30
right.
days,
30
one
days.
episode after 30 days.
All right.
And for me, my company, Grow Your Show, we also serve podcasters. So my podcast serves podcasters, and my company does too. And so for me, we can attribute, this is great, and way more money than that doctor. We can attribute $40,000 per month gross revenue coming into the company just by promoting just our own self.
Amazing.
Now, we don't do it in a sleazy scumbag way. We don't do it in a weird way, a mean way. We literally just say, hey, we can help you, and that's it. And we have just a couple of people per month, 1 or 2 people, and that's it. Out of thousands of listeners, we don't need a lot. And our prices to work with us over a year is anywhere from $25,000 to around $110,000 in one full year. And our main package is about $40,000. So because we get 1 or 2 people joining the podcast each month, we average a gross of $40,000 a month. So here's our options. Go to the CPM model, and you might make $100 or $200 a month. Go to you reach out to the sponsor and make them a partner of your show because you share the same avatar, the same listener. You serve the same person. Maybe you're going to make $3,000 to $10,000. Now you go and sell your own product and service. Now you're going to make $10,000. And I have one client who makes over $300,000 a month because of his podcast.
Wow.
So about $1 million a quarter. So you can make 10 grand to maybe 300,000. Me personally, for 40,000. And that's by doing option number 3, the best option, in my opinion, when you sell your own product or service.
Amazing. So first of all, thank you for sharing the numbers. I think that a lot of people that I talk with them, they, disclose everything. They always talk, very generally, and thank you for because I think it gives the example exactly of how it looks and how it works. So thank you for that. I want to ask you 2 quick questions because we are running out of time. You need to get back to your empty stand. First of all is about tips. I wanted if most of people who hear us, they want to have a podcast, they have a podcast. If you could give to Adam that starts his podcast on his first day, 1 tip that can make his life much better, what would it be?
Honestly, the biggest thing with the people that I work with that I think they need to do is understand their avatar. Like so many podcasters, they have an idea of who they want to serve, but they neglect to remember that in every step. So some don't even know who they serve, and they don't know how to serve them. They don't know what the psychographics, what they're worried about, what keeps them up at night. And that makes it so that they neglect to have the right guests on their show. They forget to ask the right questions to the guest. They might talk over the head of that person, and they might pretend. This is a big problem. If you don't really understand your avatar, truly, then you might talk above the level where your avatar is, because
below.
And most commonly they talk above it, and it's because I'm the host. I want to sound smart, and so I'm going to use all this language that makes me sound smart. But my perfect avatar, my perfect listener, they don't understand it that way. They are coming into it. And so I can't talk at the highest level. I have to talk at the level that's going to bring that person. So biggest mistake, biggest thing, know who your avatar is and think about it every step of the way with your artwork, with your music, with your questions, with your guests, and with all of your content. Make sure you're speaking to that person, not above that person.
Amazing. Yeah. Very good tip. Which also, like for me, I always start my podcast with a strategic plan when I try to understand the avatar as most. And everyone, clients, when we start the way, asks me, how long should be an episode? Tell him, it's not about what you think. They said, I like to hear 20 minutes. I like to hear 40 minutes. I tell him, it's not about you. It's about the avatar. Let's see who is it, what he likes, and what he wants to hear. So thank you for that. And the last question I want to ask is about the American market and about its future. You knew at 2019 there's going to be something that needs to stop real estate for. So I think you're a kind of prophet. So let's see what your prophecy is going to be about the American market. Where the podcast go? Is it going to continue booming? Is it going to stop? Is it going to decline? What's going to happen in the podcast world?
In America, it's going to just keep growing. I believe within 3 more years, we'll be close to the same amount of shows that are on YouTube. So we're at 5-ish million now, and we're going to probably go to 60-ish million in a few years. Total podcasts in the world. Most of them currently are in the US, which adds to what we're talking about. And I think that other countries, Mexican-speaking countries right now, France, probably your country as well, have the most potential right now of growth. And so if your listener speaking Hebrew is even thinking about starting a podcast, you have such a golden place to start right now. It's great if you're English speaking, you're going to be fine. But anything else, you are so lucky right now because you have an even stronger advantage if you start right away.
Yeah, so it's always our tip to start right away and not to get whatever info you need and just get on it because you learn throughout the process. And that's what I like most about podcasts because I actually got a question from, I was meeting some woman that going to start a podcast and she's thinking and bickering and she consulted me and she told me, should I start and going to a podcast network right now with my podcast or should I do it myself? So I told her, listen, it's not going to be good in the 5, 10, 20 first episode. It's better for you to start your own, do your own game, improve, get better, and then go out there and find your own network because you don't know it's going to be on the first episode. So yeah, I'm totally up to that. So start your own podcast. That's the best thing you can up with them today. So Adam, thank you so much for your time and to the great conversation we had. And thank you for your info and knowledge and everything you shared with us. And I hope to see you soon.
Right back at you.
Thank you, and תודה רבה לכם שהזנתם. נתראה בפרקים הבאים. יאללה ביי. תודה רבה שהזנתם לאיך עושים פודקאסט. אם נהניתם, ממש אשמח אם תדרגו את הפודקאסט הזה ב5 כוכבים באפליקציה שבה אתם מאזינים, וגם תשתפו אותו לחבר, חברה, מישהו רוצה לעשות פודקאסט, והמידע בפרק הזה ובכלל יעזור להם. אתם יכולים לראות את כל הפרקים באתר שלנו howtopodcast.co.il ולעקוב אחריי. אני פעיל בעיקר בפייסבוק, באינסטגרם ובטיק טוק. מי שרוצה ומוזמן יכול גם לשלוח לי הודעה למייל שלי or@procast.online. ועכשיו הנה הפתעה קטנה שמגיעה לכם רק בגלל שנשארתם עד החלק הזה של הפרק. אז לא מזמן הוצאתי קורס דיגיטלי שנקרא איך עושים פודקאסט, הקורס הדיגיטלי. זה קורס מטורף שלקח לי כמה חודשים לייצר, ויש בו 50 שיעורים אדירים שיתנו לכם את כל המידע שרק צריך בשביל לעשות פודקאסט, מהבנייה של התוכן והתוכנית, דרך ההקלטה, העריכה, הפצה, שיווק, בכל הפלטפורמות הקיימות היום. קורס מאוד מאוד מקיף שנתתי את נשמתי וליבי עבורו, ובמיוחד למי ששומע את איך עושים פודקאסט, במיוחד למי שנשאר ממש עד הרגע האחרון של הפרק, יש לכם מחיר מיוחד עבורו. כל מה שאני מבקש הוא שתדרגו את הפודקאסט שלי ב5 כוכבים, תשלחו לי את צילום המסך למייל שלי or@procast.online. ברגע שתעשו את זה, תשלחו לי את הדירוג של 5 כוכבים של הפודקאסט איך עושים פודקאסט or@procast.online. תקבלו ממני את הקורס הזה שבדרך כלל עולה 1,000 שקלים לרכישה. תקבלו ממני אותו במחיר הכי זול שאני אי פעם מציע את הקורס הזה, ואני אציע אותו אך ורק כאן במחיר הזה, 450 שקלים בלבד, כולל מע"מ אפילו. אז מחיר מדהים לאנשים מדהימים שעוקבים אחריי, אני מעריך את זה מאוד. אז תעשו את זה והקורס שלי בדרך אליכם. תודה שהזנתם, תראה בפרקים הבאים, ביי ביי.